think I can tell there's a little bit of an echo in this room, and I apologize for that, but we're in a new space. If it's too big of a deal, I will figure it out next time. Guess who's back? Hi again. I've been away for a month and a half because I temporarily lived in the East Coast. I did try to film a monthly wrap-up in like early September for my August knits, but the lighting in my apartment was just not it. I lived in like the basement level of an apartment building, and I had a window looking into the outside, but like half of it was the street and or bushes, you know what I mean? So I get like half a window worth of sunlight, and I was mostly underground, so it really just wasn't good lighting. I have so much to show you, so much. FOs, whips, acquisitions, honestly an obscene amount of acquisitions, I said that weird, but I'm only going to show you a couple that I'm really excited about. Not that I'm like not excited about most of them, but there's just too much. I bought too much. By the way, if this is your first video that you're watching, hi, my name is Erin. Welcome. And if you're not new, then welcome back. I'm so excited to show you all the things. We'll do FOs. You know the drill. We're starting with finished objects. This is the first one. I'm gonna scoot back here so there's more space for you to see. Oh my gosh. If you follow me on Instagram, you will have already seen this. This is the Piping Hot Sweater by Lily Kate France. I'll show you the back. Also got a stripe down. It's called Piping Hot because there are these pipings throughout the front, the back, and the sleeves worked from the shoulder all the way down to the very end. It actually, the ribbon goes all the way through the cuff. I did this as a test knit for Lily. The test knit started in, I think it was end of July 17th, something like that. And then I finished this end of August. So it took me pretty much a month, which is very fast for me. I did the majority of the yoke in like 4 days, because I had COVID. So I was stuck at home, bored, had nothing to do. So I literally only worked on this sweater for like 4 days straight, and I was able to make a lot of progress with it very quickly. So that's a big reason why I finished this sweater in pretty much a month. Usually it takes me about a month and a half. The construction this is a saddle shoulder construction. Can you tell? Should I put this on? I'll put this on shortly. But this is a saddle shoulder construction. You do start the piping immediately. So can you see this is one shoulder essentially. There's not even ribbing, so you literally like cast on these little saddle shoulders with the piping. So you are working with that piping from day one. Page 1, you're working with the piping, and it pretty much just doesn't end. It goes all the way down. So very straightforward saddle shoulder construction, except with the added complexity of having to work this piping in the middle of the front panel, in the middle of the back panel, and then of course as you're doing your shoulders. So what Lily actually recommends is you have your contrast yarn or whatever yarn you're using for the piping to put that on little bobbins and attach those to the front, the back, the shoulders, etc. so that it's just easier for you to work with versus having to like juggle a ball of yarn, and it'll for sure 100% get tangled if you're working with 2 balls of yarn for the piping. So let me see if I can show you what I use for the bobbin. Let me grab it. I actually still have some left over, but I cut little cardboard rectangles essentially, and then cut a slit in the top and the bottom, and then wound my contrast yarn around it, and then just had these little pieces attached to the sweater as I went. I think a lot of people, I mean, I didn't come up with this idea, I saw it somewhere else, and I don't have yarn holders, bobbins, or whatever, so that's just what I did, and it worked for me, and it did look a little bit funny, especially when you have so many things attached. And I worked my piping yarn double. So I had double the amount of little cardboard thingies attached to my sweater, so it was pretty finicky, but I thought it wasn't that bad. It was much better than having to deal with 2 balls, or yeah, multiple balls of yarn and having to deal with that. So I personally thought it was fine. It's just a nice break from working in stockinette forever. You know, I know it's nice and mindless, and sometimes it's exactly what I want, but with this sweater, it was just nice to know that, oh, there's something fun. Essentially once per round, you're gonna do a couple of stitches of piping and then like that. The piping, by the way, is essentially an I-cord. So if you've worked I-cords before, it's very, very, very similar. The only thing that was new to me was initially when you're starting the I-cord at the very top, that cast on was very new to me, and that was a little difficult for me to understand. So I did have to rip that back a couple times, but it wasn't a big deal, and after I got the hang of it, it was pretty easy. But Lily does have a video in the pattern that she made so that you can follow along with, and it's very clear. It's what I used, so worked for me. And then I will say also during the bind off, I just didn't read the instructions properly, so some of my piping bind offs look a little wonky when you're really looking up close, and I'll show you because we're friends and you're not gonna make fun of me. I don't know if you can tell, but it just doesn't look super clean, super neat. But the way, like, oh, this one. I tried to hide the weirdness with like some extra finagling and stitches. Like there's a little bump at the top there. You can see that. The way that Lily has it written, you definitely won't get this issue. It's just I'm a dummy and I didn't read correctly. So yeah. One more thing I want to talk about before I try this sweater on and show you guys what it looks like on is that for the body, the ribbing, or sorry, the piping doesn't go all the way through the ribbing. I mean, granted, there's like maybe an inch of ribbing at the bottom, and obviously you can make it longer or shorter depending on what you want. But I just thought it was interesting that the sleeve piping goes all the way through the ribbing, but then the body doesn't. So you know, I guess it's like personal preference. If you wanted to have it cut off like it says in the pattern right before the ribbing, you can do that. Or if you want it to go all the way through, you can definitely make that happen because you already know the technique anyways from the sleeves. Okay, I will be back because I'm gonna put this on. I also forgot to mention, but you do work short rows. So there is a clear front and a back to the sweater. Okay, here's the sweater on. I'm gonna scoop it so you can see. You can probably tell the collar is on the wider side, so it's, at least for me, it is on the wider side. I have a little bump here because of my necklace, but just ignore that. And I think a lot of testers also pointed out that their collars were a bit wide. So in the final pattern, I think Lily has mentioned that she has reduced the stitch count a little bit to adjust for a slightly narrower collar. So if you were to make this now, you wouldn't really get such a wide collar. I personally like the width of this collar. I like that it's in between a boat neck-y sort of collar and then a average sweater collar circumference. It's in that middle. So I personally like it. It just is another unique feature of this sweater for me. I think I mentioned this in my last video, but the collar cast on and ribbing that I did, we can't look too closely at it because my bind off, my Italian bind off, is all sorts of wrong. But I will say, I also mentioned this in the last video, I learned how to do Italian bind off correctly through this sweater. My collar bind off was wrong, but my sleeve bind off and my body bind off, that's all correct. That's a win. That's actually a huge win, as you'll see in my next couple of items to show you. One more thing I want to talk about for this sweater while it's on my body is, can you tell that the sleeve lengths are a little bit different? So sleeve length was another thing that a lot of the testers had feedback on. The sleeves were initially like super long. So my left sleeve I did first, and I don't know, it depends on your personal taste, I guess, but it comes naturally to like the middle of my hand, which is fine. I like it. It just wasn't what the pattern called for. So in my second sleeve, I modified it a little bit, modified the rate of decrease a little bit so that it would hit at my wrist. I can't decide which one I like better, and honestly, no one can tell when I'm wearing it. Like, no one's gonna know that I have an extra inch or so, a couple of inches on one hand versus the other. I think that after wearing this 4, 5 times. I think I like the longer one better. I don't know, it just feels cozier. I like my sleeves to be grabbable versus here. Okay, let's talk yarn and needle size and grams and meterage and all that fun stuff. All this information is in my Ravelry, which is where I'm also reading it from. Needle size. The pattern calls for a 4mm needle for the body and the majority of this sweater. I got gauged with a 3.75mm needle. And I think the reason for that is because for my main color, the blue here, I use Sandnes Garn Duo, and it says it's DK on the website and on the band itself, but I think it's a lighter DK, maybe like a in between a sport and a DK. So the fabric that I was getting with the Sandnes Garn Duo and the 4mm needles just was a little bit too loose for my liking. Plus the Duo is, you know, like pretty much a 50-50 cotton merino blend, and I figured it was going to stretch after blocking anyways. So I was like, it's already looking a little loose with the 4mm. I'm going to size it down just a little bit to the 3.75. And I'm glad I did because I really, really like this fabric. For the Duo, I used about 7.5 balls, which came out to be roughly 850 meters. I did make my sweater more cropped than what the pattern called for. Let me see here. I made it 6 centimeters shorter than what the pattern was recommending or just saying. And that's just because I like my sweaters a little bit cropped. And I hope you saw like where it hits me. If I raise my arms, my belly button's down here. You can definitely see my belly button, but I don't intend to raise my arms, and most of my pants are high-waisted, so it'll be fine. Ooh, for the contrast color, I used Blue Sky Fibers Woolstok Light, and the colorway is Golden Meadow, and I used about 20 grams. So I bought a 50-gram skein, and I was holding it double because the yarn is a fingering weight yarn. So I was holding this double, and even so I only used just under half of it. So I still have like 30 grams of that contrast yarn left, and I do have plans for it, but we'll talk about that in the future. And the meterage for this contrast or this piping color was about 80 meters, but again, keep in mind that I did hold it double. This sweater gives me about 8 centimeters of positive ease, and I like that it's not oversized, and I also like that it's not super fitted. My goal with this sweater and these colors that I picked was to make it work appropriate. I wanted to be able to wear this into work, and I definitely will. I'll actually be going into the office next week, so I'll be wearing this into the office, and I think it's great. The colors are fun, but not too fun for the office, if you know what I mean. And I'm really, really happy with this one. Really happy with it. Testing for Lily was also super great. She's very responsive. We had a Slack workspace where all the communication happened, and anytime anyone had any issues, she would respond like within 24 hours. Sometimes she had no reception in some places, but she would respond very, very quickly. So the test experience too was really great. So yes, my first FO. Okay, FO number 2. This is an impulsive cast on. I had no plans of making this at all. I literally walked into Gather Here, which is the best Boston yarn store that I went to. I walked into that store, I saw this yarn, and I immediately knew what I had to do with it. So here we have the poppy sweater. This is my second, or poppy tee, oh my god. This is my second poppy tee. I do have my first one here that I will be using as a comparison. This is my first one that I made with the Noir Sonata. And this is the second one that I made with Hedgehog Fibers Tweedy in the colorway Noir. I know. So I was looking up information on the gauge or the weight of this yarn, and I couldn't really find anything too exact, but I did see that it was roughly a sport weight yarn, and I was like, well, I know a pattern that calls for sport weight yarn. And it was obviously the poppy tee. So I bought 3 skeins of the Tweedy yarn, 3 100-gram skeins. Each skein is 230 meters, And the fiber content is 50% Falkland merino wool, 37.5% recycled wool, and 12.5% thread waste. So, I mean, that's the Tweedy parts. I feel like 12.5% is a lot. But yeah, the speckly bits were definitely what drew me to this yarn. And I will say a couple of notes about this yarn. It sheds a little bit. So the tweed, okay, well, it sheds like in two different ways. When I was working with it, the color, the waist with the thread waist, it feels weird to call it that. But the Tweedy parts, they're not super tightly spun into the yarn. And so as you're knitting, the larger chunks will just like break off from the yarn, and I felt really sad about those. So I would grab the pieces that fell out and like try to like rub it back into the yarn and then try to secure it with a couple of stitches. So a lot of, I don't know if you can see. So actually a lot of the larger Tweedy pieces here, they're very easy to pull out, and I'm not gonna mess around with it. Like that one, I can definitely just like pull it out. Same with these parts, I can just boop, take them out. So that's part of the shedding. The other shedding is the black yarn itself. It wasn't too bad, but I definitely noticed that if I had the ball of yarn on a table and I was knitting and I would be there for a couple of minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, there'd be like a little dusting of black fuzz on the table. So just keep that in mind. Both the Tweedy parts fall out and the black yarn has a little bit of shedding. All right, and here it is on. I love it so much. I made it a cropped tee, so you can definitely see that it is cropped. Oh, and by the way, I only blocked like this part up. So this chunk is not blocked. The reason for that is because I got to like this length and I was like, is this long enough to be a cropped tee, or is it too short to be a cropped tee? And then I blocked it. Turns out it was too short, so I had to knit a couple more inches. But I haven't gotten around to blocking it a second time yet, so that's why it might look a little wonky, like right about here. That's another thing with this yarn. It softens up so much with blocking. I just dumped it in water. I think I had it in water for 15-20 minutes. I didn't have any wool wash with me, so no soap, no conditioner, none of that stuff, just pure water. And I'm getting fuzz on my face. And it really just softens super nicely. You can't really see any of the stitch definition at all, which is perfectly fine with me. I really want the colorful parts to shine anyways, not so much the stitches. And my sleeves, are they different lengths? I think they look fine. One might be slightly longer than the other one, but no one's gonna be able to tell. No one's gonna be able to tell. It's fine. I really like the sleeve length anyways. I just kind of eyeballed it as I went. I also dangerously, living on the edge here, I did not do a gauge swatch when I started this. I literally just cast on. I was like, I don't need a gauge swatch. It's sport weight. My gauge with Petite Knits gauge is usually on par. We have the same gauge if the yarn weight is correct. So I was like, I'm gonna take my chances, it'll be fine. It is definitely on the smaller side of the pattern. So I'm gonna take this off in a bit and hold it up to the first poppy tee that I knit, and you'll definitely be able to see the difference. Part of the difference in the size or the stretch is definitely due to the yarn. This is mostly a wool yarn, and then this is a bunch of stuff, but there's not much wool, if any, in here. There's like some silk, some viscose. I can't remember the contents exactly. But it, you know, part of it is definitely because this yarn is just going to be stretchier and get looser with time. But I really love this, especially for winter. I know like a wool t-shirt, it seems kind of counterintuitive, but when the weather was getting just a little bit cool in Boston, like just that perfect fall weather, like low 70s, high 60s, this was perfect. I would wear another t-shirt underneath here because it is just a little bit itchy. Like I have a tank top under this right now and it's totally bearable. I could go out like this and be fine. But on days where I just want to be a little bit warmer and protect from itch, I guess a little bit more, I do throw on another t-shirt under here. And it's totally fine. For the pattern, it's the poppy tee. I've talked about it before, and if I'm being completely honest, I feel like knitting this tee was like a fever dream. I could not tell you still, even though I've knit the pattern twice, anything about the construction other than the fact that It's got set-in sleeves, and it's a crop tee. Like I genuinely don't know how it happened. Does anyone else feel like that? I feel like for some of the patterns that I knit, I just follow the pattern and I'm not thinking about the construction of what I'm making. I'm just doing what it tells me to do. And then at the end, I'm like, yay, cool, I have this thing. But then someone is like, oh, how did you do that? I don't know, I follow the instructions. But this is the two tees held pretty much back to back. So you can see the Sonata is definitely a little bit looser and wider, and the Hedgehog Fibers is shorter, tighter for sure. Before I blocked the Hedgehog Fiber one, I thought the collar was so tight. Like, it was literally choking me. So then when I did block it, I tried to stretch it out as much as I could. I didn't have any pins with me, so I just took, the apartment had like vases, yeah, and like just heavier decor items, so that I put the tee down and I put like a heavy decor item on one shoulder, and then I stretched it and I put another heavy decor item down on the other shoulder, and it worked out. It worked out pretty well. When I had it on earlier, it did not feel like I was being choked to death, so that was lovely. Okay, those are all the finished objects that I have. We'll move on to work in progress, and I'll just show you two, because I got too many, to be honest, whips. I don't want to go through them all today. But I'm really excited about this one. This is, oh, I'm so in love with it. I'm so in love with it. This is the Louvre sweater by Petite Knit. How do I show you in its full glory? Oh yeah. Both sleeves are done. Sleeve number 1, sleeve number 2, in case you didn't believe me. On me, it is still very cropped and it's very warm. So I have my work cut out for me. Here's what my plan is, and I don't know if it'll work. I have 2 yarns I'm using with this. I'll get into it real quick, but my goal is just to use up the Suri, knit until I use up the Suri, and then I'll just see where I'm at, and hopefully that's long enough, because I don't want to buy another skein of that. The yarn is, the pink one is Manos del Uruguay Milo in the colorway Petal. Petite. I bought this on sale a year ago. And this one, my little cotton candy ball, this is Suri. The dyer is the Woolly Warbler, hand dyed. She hand dyes these in Los Angeles. I believe the colorway is Olive Warbler, and the fiber content is 74% baby Suri alpaca, 26% silk. And I get 50 gram balls, 328 yards per ball or skein. So I bought 3 of these initially, and I had 3 of these. I was kind of hoping and praying, I didn't really do my math, but I was hoping and praying that the quantity would just work out, but I'm pretty sure that I'm going to have leftover Milo yarn. So fingers crossed that the Suri takes me as far as I need to go for the body. I'm obsessed. Dude, I love this Suri alpaca so much. I'm going to hold it up closer so you can see what I'm talking about. Oh yeah. My only, it's not even a regret, but no, it's an opportunity, that's what it is. I'm going to purchase the Suri again, and I'm gonna hold it with a white yarn so that the pinks really have an opportunity to shine through. You can kind of see the pinks in this, but it's just purely because I'm holding it with a pink yarn. The pinks in the Suri get lost a little bit, but can you see the pinks in the sleeve? Oh, that's a little spot of pink right there. Yeah. And then I love how the browns are showing up. There's little bits of dark brown interspersed. A couple of notes to leave you with for this pattern specifically. The pattern calls for tubular cast on. I did not bother with that. I'm bad at tubular cast on. I don't think I want to learn how to be good at it. It's just my stitches get twisted and it's such a pain. Like, it requires so much brain power to get that right. So I said, screw it. I'm just gonna do a long tail cast on for the collar. I'm sure it'll be fine. It is fine. Like, yeah, you can tell it's a long tail cast on. And yeah, like the purl bumps, like the ribbing doesn't just blend seamlessly into the cast on, but it's totally fine. And then for the sleeves, I did do tubular cast off. It looks so good. I'm so happy I learned how to do Italian bind off the right way. I will say, the Suri definitely sheds. On my pants right now, which are dark colored, there's some white fuzzies. And when I'm knitting it, I do sometimes like breathe in a fuzzy. So there is that, but it's so soft. And it's not itchy at all. It's soft and squishy. I have another whip to show you guys. I had it all tied up and bundled up for easier knitting. This is my Vienna Blouse. I have done a sleeve. I'm working on my second sleeve. Ding! And I still have the entire body to go. So not super looking forward to that because it's just knitting flat forever. I need to do the peplum too, so we'll see. But I did do a sleeve and I'm happy with it. I love knitting sleeves so much. On my flight back, I managed to knit this much. I was splitting my time between this and the Louvre sweater on the plane because I was dangerously close to running out of yarn for both. So I ran out of the Milo for the Louvre sweater. And then I was like, well, I guess I have to work on this one. And then I ran out of the Sandnes Garn Sunday for this. I have extras, they just weren't with me on the plane. So the yarn for the Vienna Blouse that I'm working on, the pattern calls for holding it, or holding their mohair, the Sandnes Garn Tynn Silk Mohair, double, but I am holding it with Sunday. Boom. I've talked about this combo many a times, so I will spare you the majority of the details. This is Sandnes Garn Sunday, a petite knit color, the colorway 4008, and Tynn Silk Mohair in the colorway dark red or deep red, something like that. Look at this. It's like the perfect in between. It just crossed my mind that I can like wear this. Oh my god, it's just like baby sleeves right now. That's actually kind of cute. So I'm gonna find the two ends. Okay, so here's the ends. I definitely think, or I'm hoping that it'll stretch out a little bit when I block it, because it's a little teeny bit tight right now, just around the body. Oh, I love this. I love this. For the sleeves, I have to do my sewn bind off. I have to like sew like a chunk of the sleeve into itself. I did go down a needle size for this blouse. So the pattern calls for 4 millimeters and I'm using 3.75 millimeter needles. That's just what I got gauge with. Even though you would think like this yarn combo is thicker, right? Instead of the pattern calls for 2 strands of mohair, I'm using Sunday and the mohair. You would think that it like creates a thicker fabric, so I should be going up in needle size. I don't know. I just remember not hitting gauge with that, so. I'm making this as part of a make-along, match-along. I'm buddy knitting this essentially with Jean, who's also on YouTube. Here she is. We cast on together. It was awesome. I've never felt so motivated and happy knitting than when I was like knitting with her and knitting with a friend. So it was so fun. We are going to meet up again to make more progress. She is super close to being done. I have just been distracted. I've been distracted. So now I'm really needing to play catch up. And part of me is like, oh, finish your Louvre sweater. Part of me is like, oh, finish your Vienna Blouse. And the Louvre sweater part of me is winning right now. Okay, last but not least, we have acquisitions. I'm only going to show you 3 of the many more yarns that I bought. And I'm showing these 3 because each one came from a different place and I just thought that was more fun and probably more meaningful for me to look back on. So the first one is Retrosaria or Rosa Pomar Mondim. I feel like I have always wanted to buy Rosaria or Rosa Pomar yarn because the little artwork on their like yarn bands are so cute. I got this from Gather Here in Boston. I mentioned them earlier. My favorite yarn store. It is huge. So it's a fabric store and a yarn store, but they also have other, like they sell embroidery stuff, felting stuff. They had a good amount of roving if one wanted to get into spinning. I avoided that section. And they just had a wonderful yarn selection. Like I spent so much money there over the last month and a half. This was my final purchase from that store. It was like my parting gift to myself. Like, oh, I'm leaving, I'm saying goodbye. Here's my consolation prize. Mondim is a fingering weight yarn. It is 100% wool, I believe. Yes, 100% Portuguese wool. It's got 385 meters in this 100 gram ball. I really want to make, it's a pattern by the Petite knitter called Saskie, S-A-S-K-I-E. I have always loved her stuff. I've really wanted to make a colorwork sweater by her, and this bunny one came out very recently. I don't know exactly when, but it came out in September. It's so cute. It's so cute. So I'm thinking of doing the colorwork portion, so the upper where the bunnies are, in this gorgeous deep red. The colorway, by the way, is 303. So yes, just imagine that sweater with red bunnies. Red bunnies? Or should I do white bunnies and then red for everything else? No, I'm gonna go with my original. Red bunny motif and then a cream, like an off-white on the bottom. Oh, cute! The next item I brought to show and tell is Rowan Felted Tweed. I have been in a tweed obsessed mood. Like I am so into tweed, super into tweed. And I saw this at, so I got this yarn in New York. Pretty sure I got it at Downtown Yarns. Super cute yarn store. They had so much Noir. Oh my god, I almost bought so much Noir from them. They had the most beautiful Noir colorways as well. Like so good, so good. I almost spent like $300 at that store, but I did not. I just bought 4 balls of this Rowan yarn. Each ball is 50 grams. It is 22 to 24 stitches per 10 centimeters. The content is 50% wool, 25% alpaca, 25% viscose. And I don't know if you saw earlier when I was holding it up closer to the camera, but there's little bits of blue in here. I bought the yarn and then we were just walking around New York and I kept pulling it out and like looking at it on the subway, in like restaurants. I would pull it out and like just start giggling to myself. It was psychopathic behavior, but I have plans for this too. I'm thinking of making an Amy slipover with this. Okay, last but not least, and I haven't even unpacked this yet because this was an online order I made to ship to my place in California while I was still in Boston. I saw that over Labor Day, Purl Soho was having a sale. Who told me? I don't know who told me, but someone told me and I was like, well, I better get on that. I really want to try Purl Soho yarn. And I thought, this is my golden opportunity. Look at this little postcard they sent. Cute. I got 3 skeins total. I had them also wind up 1 ball for me. I think it was free, that's why I did that. But this is good wool, 100% Andean Highland wool, and I got it in the undyed colorway. I love it. Another sweater I really want to make soon, hopefully, is the Moby sweater. I personally really like the more vertical like motifs as opposed to the Ingrid sweater as opposed to her storm sweater. Like they're all like horizontal motifs. I just like the verticalness of the Moby sweater. And I want it in like a beige. Okay, I wanted it in a boring beigey color, and I think this is great. Yeah, I only have like 1,000, maybe like just under 1,100 yards. So it'll have to be a slightly cropped Moby sweater. I debated buying a 4th skein, but I said no. I can make it happen with 3. We'll see if I regret that. Okay, that is all that I have for you. I hope you have a wonderful month, and I will see you next time. Bye!
I don't think about it.
The girl who tells you to not worry about anything.
About you leaving me. I don't know who I'd be. Would everything we built just turn to broken leaves?
Once you're ready, yeah, once you get on it, then you can start.
I don't think
Don't hit the table.
about it.
Yay, yippee!
Do you think of me?
Wait, so in Montana now, it's like if you're dating a couple, when you say you're dating a digit. Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's for Chinese people, like digit is mommy.
Never hearing me talk to myself in the morning anymore. Would it all just turn and turn and turn and turn and turn and turn? You don't think about it. Maybe it scares you like it scares me. What do we do with all the possibilities? Doesn't it scare you like it scares me? What do we do with all
41 rows total of raglan increases, and we're about to count our stitches for each section. So this is the moment of truth. We're gonna do this
We
together.
don't think about it.
This is a Christmas miracle.
We
I
just
cannot believe that for the first time in my life, I did raglan increases and I got the correct number of total stitches. This is a historic moment.
but we don't talk about it.